Ali estava a minha querida terra, esperando que eu desse o primeiro passo para tocá-la. Já solto por eles, dei um passo e toquei na relva do campo. Dei outro, estava fora da nave. Quando completei os 10 passos recomendados por ele, parei e devagar fui me voltando, esperando ver a partida da nave. Mas qual nada, ali não se encontrava mais nave alguma. Olhei para o horizonte com esperança de avistá-la. Também não vi nada.
Ele nos impressionou com o seu relato. Nós não chegamos à conclusão que ele não tivesse passado isso.
Dentro de uma opinião científica, os detalhes, a situação, a época, deixa claro que o senhor Artur Berlet viveu uma experiência provavelmente em outro planeta.
Mas ele ficou um eremita, alguém que se recolheu para o seu mundo.
Até o pai, tanto que até o pai ficou quieto, não falou nada por um bom tempo, porque ele sabia que o pessoal não ia acreditar.
Isso nos traz uma mensagem que existe no universo, né? E pode existir muito mais de pessoas já bem mais evoluídas do que nós.
No entardecer de 14 de maio de 1958, a pacata vida do jovem Artur Berlet, um tratorista da Prefeitura da cidade de Sarandi, estaria para ser profundamente modificada. Naquele dia, Artur iria viver uma experiência extraordinária.
Estamos na estrada Natalino, que liga a esquina Natalino a Sarandi, num percurso de 18 quilômetros.
Vinha eu de regresso do interior, já a caminho de Sarandi. E eram mais ou menos 19 horas.
Em 14 de maio de 1958, o meu pai estava tentando vencer a pé esse percurso. Quando ao chegar nessa altura da estrada, ele avistou, próximo àquele mato, uma luz.
Minha atenção foi chamada por uma luz estranha colocada na orla de um mato que aproximadamente se distanciava a cerca de 200 metros de onde me encontrava na estrada. Atravessei a cerca de arame e quando me encontrava a cerca de 30 metros da luz, verifiquei com espanto que era um objeto material redondo com cerca de 30 metros de diâmetro.
Ao chegar próximo, ele percebeu que era um objeto estranho em forma de 2 bandejas sobrepostas.
Senti vontade de retroceder e fugir. Entretanto, dominando-me e procurando raciocinar em torno do que via, aproximei-me mais ainda, quando subitamente surgiram mais de 2 vultos e um fortíssimo jato de luz me foi atirado, fazendo-me perder os sentidos.
Um tempo se passou, ele recuperou os sentidos e viu que se tratava de estar dentro de uma nave espacial.
O objetivo desses seres não eram pegar seres humanos, né? Eram fazer experiência em plantações.
Eu tive um contato com o Artur no ano de 1969, no 2º semestre.
Isso aí é uma coisa que realmente aconteceu, que naquela época é difícil de acreditar.
O que mais nos tocou e nos convenceu foi com a convicção, com a certeza que ele contava as coisas que ele teria vivido e o que ele teria visto.
Quando acordou, Artur Berlet estava no planeta Acarte, a aproximadamente 65 milhões de quilômetros da Terra. A viagem até o planeta durou cerca de 38 horas. A partir daí, até o seu retorno, passaram-se 11 dias. No planeta Acarte, Artur ficou a maior parte do tempo numa cidade com quase 90 milhões de habitantes. Segundo os seus relatos, os acartianos possuem o tipo físico muito semelhante ao do homem da Terra. Foi através do idioma alemão que ele conseguiu se comunicar com os extraterrestres.
E ele só lembra que estava dentro do local completamente isolado, que via criaturas, pessoas muito semelhantes a nós, seres humanos. Ele ficou muito assustado, apreensivo, porque era um local completamente desconhecido do seu cotidiano, do seu dia a dia.
E o pai sempre dizia, logo nós vamos ter contato direto com extraterrestres e tudo isso vai vir à tona.
Um acartiano, cujo nome era Acorque, serviu de anfitrião e guia para Artur durante todo o tempo da viagem. Artur manteve contato com tecnologias e avanços na área social, econômica e política, que, segundo ele mesmo, equivaleriam a séculos de evolução se comparados com o que se vivia na Terra de 1958. Vale lembrar que, oficialmente, a primeira viagem espacial do homem foi em 1969, rumo à Lua.
Então, qual é o planeta que os senhores têm em mira? Ele fez uma cara azeda e retorceu os lábios e por fim disse: eu me desgosto ter que lhe contar, mas como o filho do sol me pediu para fazê-lo, tenho que fazê-lo. Antes ele continuar, eu, louco de medo que ele dissesse que sim, perguntei: por acaso os acartianos estão planejando invadir a Terra? Não é este o termo exato, mas é realmente na Terra que esperamos resolver este nosso problema.
O Sr. Berlet, ele menciona, escreve nos seus manuscritos que ele viu a Terra na cor azul. Nós só tomamos conhecimento cientificamente desse fato no dia 12 de abril de 1961, quando Yuri Gagarin, o soviético, sobrevoou pela primeira vez, o nosso espaço. Andou em torno da Terra e falou essa frase: a Terra é azul.
Que se eles têm condições de vir até nós, é porque eles são um povo culto, um povo inteligente, um povo desenvolvido.
Em diversos momentos, também em nosso diálogo, ele expressava sempre a saudade que ele tinha de voltar, a angústia de voltar. Ele relatava essas pessoas e aquele planeta como um planeta de muita paz.
Após 11 dias, Artur foi devolvido ao planeta Terra. Ele foi deixado muito perto do local da abdução, ou seja, do sequestro pelos alienígenas. Em casa, Artur ficou isolado e trancado em seu quarto por dias, até que resolveu narrar a sua experiência para os seus familiares. Imediatamente, Artur começou a escrever. Foram 422 páginas que se tornaram um livro, publicado em 1967.
Com o surgimento do livro, a imprensa começou a discutir, trazer mais à tona esse assunto, Então as pessoas começaram a ver de outra maneira, de outro modo. Ufólogos vieram a Sarandi entrevistar, então isso foi caindo nos ouvidos da população.
Nos dias que tinha a lua, que tinha a estrela, que era um dia claro, que tinha aquele céu assim, sabe, que aparece todas as estrelas do mundo. Esse dia, então, nós dizíamos assim: pai, vamos sentar lá na frente. E daí nós pedíamos: pai, como é que é lá em cima, pai? Daí o pai começava a explicar, e nós olhando para cima, olhando. Aí dali um pouco, daí o pai falava tanto, a gente se encantava tanto no que ele falava, que nós nem olhava mais para as estrelas. Aí nós virava de frente para ele e ficava lá assim, ó. Sabe, aquela história assim, com a boca aberta, prestando atenção assim, nos mínimos detalhes do que ele falava.
Lá ele teria visto aparelhos parecidos com videofone, que nós conhecemos hoje, em pleno século XXI, E ele narrava um vidro a qual parecia um rosto de uma mulher, e o Acorque, que é o extraterrestre, que foi o mentor dele nesse planeta, explicou para ele que se tratava de um aparelho de comunicação comum no planeta Carta. O Sr. Artur Berlet descreve que as naves nesse planeta, todas elas funcionavam com energia solar. Outro fato interessante é que ele fala que a metrópole, a cidade, era uma cidade que tinha mais de 90 milhões de habitantes. E os prédios possuíam pequenas marquises onde pousavam as naves. Na história do Sr. Artur Berlet tem muitos fatos científicos que ainda não foram esclarecidos, que a gente não tem ainda conhecimento total. E um desses fatos veio a público agora no dia 18 de maio de 2003, quando a NASA fotografou do planeta Marte, através de uma sonda norte-americana, o planeta Terra. E a imagem que mostrou foi o centro sul-americano, o Golfo do México e América do Norte. Isto o senhor Artur Berlet já tinha narrado em 1958, quando ele viu, através de um funil, a qual ele descreve, que evidentemente poderia estar dizendo um telescópio, né? Mas a linguagem dele usou um funil, quando a Cork apontou esse funil para a Terra e ele pôde ver nitidamente o planeta Terra, a parte sul-americana, a América Central, inclusive o Golfo do México, com todos os seus detalhes. E ele frisa que viu isto nitidamente. Só que esse fato, que pela primeira vez o ser humano tomou conhecimento dessas imagens, foi agora no dia 18 de maio de 2003, através de uma sonda norte-americana que está fotografando a planície marciana.
No caso dos acartianos, eles conseguiram o sistema de abolir o dinheiro. Todo mundo trabalha, e todo mundo participa.
O curioso é que no livro dele, né, no original do livro dele, de 1967, ele pergunta para o Cork que dia e que horas são no planeta Terra. Aí o Cork pergunta para ele, mas em que ponto? Ele frisa, aonde eu saí, da minha pátria.
É um governo único, uma religião única.
E nesse momento a Cork pensa um minuto e diz, é dia 18 de maio de 1958. Né? Há exatos 45 anos, aquilo que um tratorista de prefeitura viu no interior de Sarandi, né, sem conhecimento, sem tecnologia nenhuma, através dessa narrativa da sua história em outro planeta, é o conhecimento que nós temos nos dias de hoje, passado por uma sonda norte-americana.
Tudo isso vai vir à tona, entende? Então eu encaro como se ele tivesse sido um pioneiro, né?
E quando na nossa confissão de fé nós testemunhamos, creio em Deus Pai Todo-Poderoso, eu sempre imaginava que o nosso Deus seria muito pequeno se ele fosse um Deus só desse nosso mundo. E é por isso que ele me abriu a visão e eu diria, nós vamos descobrir realmente que o mundo vai além daquilo que nós enxergamos.
Em 1958, havia na Terra umas poucas dezenas de bombas. Hoje, temos milhares delas prontas para disparar a qualquer momento. Em 1958, 1/10 da população da Terra passava fome. Hoje, 1/3 passa fome. Onde quer chegar o homem da Terra? Você sabe? Então responda, porque eu sei, mas não posso responder.
This is Arthur's contact experience that he wrote in 14 pages in his notebook, right after his return trip from planet Akard in 1958. It began when he was in the local region in Brazil, where he was doing some photographic job. I was walking on foot on the highway in the direction of the city of Sarandi. It was already dark, when I saw this strange and luminous object near the ditch of a farm. I left the street and went closer to verify to see what it was, and as I saw no light near the object, I went closer, and within 10 meters, I saw people. Immediately they pointed a bright light on me that blinded me, and I lost consciousness for about half to 1 hour. When he woke up, he was in a white room, reminding him of a hospital, but soon understood he was inside a craft. After some time he was taken out and saw a city not as different as those of Earth, but the high houses was of metal in many colors. He was imprisoned in a room, where he got some food, meat and bread as he was very hungry. Later he found out that their visit was for collecting grains and vegetables for their experiments, and they judged him to be a farmer. The commander decided to take me with them, despite their laws said not to do so. Their ship was 30 meters in diameter, moved by solar energy. What are those people from Eckhart like? I could say much like us, but only more pale, whiter than those of Earth. All I saw had hair color of straw, but a few had dark hair, medium in body stature, and greater than ours. They talked in a German tongue, but could speak many tongues of Earth, and had learned it by visiting Earth. Many similar races have observed us, and can be here undetected. He was then taken to another place, and they brought him outside, which were crowded of people walking the streets, but he saw no kind of cars or any kind of vehicles. He wore a cape that he had gotten from them. Nothing then separated him out from the others. Suddenly he looked up and saw lots of crafts in the sky. One suddenly shot down from above, to a terrace of a house so quick that he was sure it would crash into it. But it had seemingly full control. Later he was advised to a room reminding him of a hotel room, with a bathroom, but the shower came more like gas than water, because it was so light. He got clothes from them after the bathing, but felt like a clown in them, as they were strange, he remarks in his writings. He was then taken into a new conference room where another group discussed what seemed to be just talking about him. One of them spoke to him in German, which he did understand. This man was 2 meters tall. He remarked a girl aged 20 there, and all were so white pale-skinned, as he says it seemed they had been inside for years, he remarks in his writing. Arthur's own father was German, and his mother was Portuguese living in Brazil. He was offered a drink, but didn't dare to drink it. Arthur asked if they were Germans, and got the answer they were all Eckartians. He said his visit there was almost accidental, nobody having planned to take any earthlings there, and that he would be brought back within 10 days. Neither was they allowed to bring any earthlings to their planet, so the captain who did take him from Earth, he was punished for it. He later found out that he had to work in a mine for some time as punishment. He was with them having a meal, and they all talked together after eating, but only one of them he was able to talk to in German. His name was a Cork. Their way of greeting was not to shake hands, but place a hand on each other's shoulders. For the persons they knew very well, they used both hands. They underlined they believed in God and remarked that he, or there, the visitor, was having doubts. Later he was taken into a smaller ship, UFO-like, with a cabin with a pilot, and looking out the windows was a wonderful view, and he was brought to another city, the main city called Khan, a city so big and marvelous that the Earthman was speechless. Because of all the crafts flying around so near and never collided, as he supposed they would have many times. They looked more like small flying camping trailers in view. He was later told that these ones could go up to 10,000 kilometers high. They landed on top of a big house. It was a big rooftop, he said. It looked like a sports field, which was where his host lived with his family. Well, each flat seemed to have terrace as a personal landing platform for those personal flying camping trailers. Inside he got a demonstration of a kind of apparatus where his host could talk to a woman seeming living inside it. It was a shock for Arthur to view. Well, it's not so strange today because now we also have picture phones, but theirs seemingly was of a 3D kind. Remember, this was in the late 50s, when only primitive black and white TV was seen rarely on a cart. This woman was his wife, who soon came in. She was also quite tall, blue eyes and shoulder-long hair of straw color. The child with her was of 12 years old. It was their son, and he was clothed just as he was from Earth, and he was very curious on the stranger from Earth. Both the boy and his mother also asked questions to Arthur, that Cork translated. The boy stayed with them much of the time he was by visit of this family. He didn't understand his talking in German, though his father translated some of it. Arthur also saw that the furniture in their day room was fixed with the walls. Then he was shown more of the big city they were in. They called the governor spiritual ruler of their planet, the son of the sun. Later he told him of their long ongoing space traffic, most of it to Earth, for collecting plants and other materials. He gave him this comparison between the two planets. One Akarsan year is similar to 675 days of Earth. 1 month on Akard is similar to 61 days, 8 hours of Earth. 1 Akard week is similar to 9 days 14 hours on Earth. 1 Akard hour is similar to 7 hours, 40 minutes on Earth. Planet Akard rotates more slowly than Earth, around itself, so a day and night was much longer than here on Earth. So the nights and sleep time were normally 17 hours. Their main purpose for visiting Earth was to try to develop plants for more effective production of food, and especially wheat, which they seemed to have problems with according to what they told me. They thought that he was farmer planting wheat, and that they could learn some useful information from him. They told him they had given him a sort of narcotic for him to sleep during most of the trip. It lasted some 36 hours. The commander of the ships that had taken the decision to bring Arthur to Akart had done this against the orders of not to touch or kill any earthling, neither brings them off Earth. So he was punished and had to serve a year in the mine, where they took up steel work, according to what they told him. There are no countries on Akart. The entire planet had for a long time been one country or region. He told Arthur that 100 years back they had many countries, hundreds of countries, and that there was so many wars, but was not enough of them, so they began cooperating with each other, and got together as one. They said that they had been observing Earth with equipment and cameras so good that they could take pictures of a nail head from 200 kilometers up. They captured radio and TV programs, and put it into their computers for help and study. In some 10 years they had learned much of Earth, including German language. Others had also learned Russian, Spanish and English. Arthur asked how they could collect all this, without being seen, and got the answer, that they could make themselves invisible. I neutralized the vision. After reaching a height of 200 meters above the buildings, we flew in a straight line toward the north for some 2 minutes. Suddenly, we stopped abruptly and began to descend. We descended to a narrow street full of pedestrians. The machine hovered near the side of an alley, where there was also infinity of people. There we jumped down and mixed with the multitude. What I felt was unusual about those people, was that it seemed that nobody was in a hurry, not the haste that is so peculiar to the great cities on earth. Another aspect that drew my attention was the manner of dress of those people. I never saw anybody dressed so shabby. Almost all of the men wore clothes more or less like what I wore, in material as well as design. The small variations were scarcely noticeable. The dress of the women was in similar style. Another thing that intrigued me was the fact that none of them paid any attention to me. Arthur remarked also that it was quite cold when the sun set, but his guide there didn't seem to freeze, and so did Arthur. He said they had no seasons, same all year around. And he remarked the sun didn't shine from any blue sky, it was cloudy all the time. Well, that was the first day. Later a morning he saw the sun rise in a clear blue sky. Some day later he experienced this cold after sunset again, but he was so impressed by the view of the city at night, that he almost forgot the cold. This when he saw the splendor of the houses seemed to shine all different kinds of colors, but at night those effects were much stronger, and the sight was very impressive for the earthling. After another night, later they visited a kind of cafe, where they had got something warm to drink. Arthur went up to the cafe host intending to pay, because he saw that his fellow man didn't pay. It was then he found out that money or paying for anything, that money doesn't exist on their planet. No money used on that cart, they were free of the slave medium. In the evening, he again got some time for himself thinking if this could be possible, but rather he could not wake up from any dream either, so it had to be real. So then he got a form of panic, when he began thinking all this through. He also had 2 small children 2 years back on earth. Then a cork came in with a wine drink he had made of fruit, which also contained alcohol, and he said that drinking such was not allowed in public places, only in homes. He said the government there had converted all the factories that earlier made harmful things like alcohol into producing beneficial matter. What foods do they have on that cart? The meals were frequent, and fish was always on the menu, plus a dark bread looking like our rye bread, and he said that their fish and oceans were just similar to ours here on earth. Despite all that I had eaten there, it seemed to me then that I could not weigh even 50 kilos there. He was 90 kilograms on earth. When he went to bed, he said that it was very comfortable. So was that one evening, he came to study his footwear he had got, and it was a kind of sandal which description in the book reminds me of these health sandals with uneven surface soles, and those also had springs inside. But it was very comfortable, as he says he could hardly feel his feet when walking. The room he slept in when he was as a guest, had no windows, he was lying in the center of the house. The next morning he woke up, without knowing what time it was. He put on the local clothes he had got from his host, not to stand out. He then went out to the terrace, and looked at the radiance of the beautiful city, while waiting for his host to awaken. Else was a cork, his host, not sure of how much he could explain to the visitor, regarding all the details of life and governments on that cart, until he had been guided by the authorities of the Son of the Sun. The opinions diverged among the council on his experience on the following day. That day he took on his earthly clothes before meeting Son of the Sun. They went to the balcony where the flying machine stood, pressed a button so that the fence went down, and flew away to the seat of the government some 60 kilometers away. He then understood that his host didn't live in the middle of the city, for just that was where they now flew, and landed on the roof of the government building, where many similar crafts stood parked. They went down an elevator to a meeting room. Arthur saw that the gathering had big respect for a cork his host. He told him that the council was of more than 500 people, and both of them were nervous. The house was round, and so was the room they came into. but one straight wall where a big table plus chairs stood in front of the curved seats in many levels. This council of 9 men, include the son of the sun, was gathered when necessary, and now the Earth-man was the first thing to discuss. The son of the sun was picked out of many thousands, out of his human understanding and wisdom qualifications. They should discuss whether Arthur should be returned to Earth. A debate followed where he was interrogated. We have transformed our planet from a hell of theft and robbery, lies, usury, speculations and shame, to a paradise of love, fraternity, understanding and progress. The next was that the son of the sun wanted a meeting with this man from Earth. He himself lived in a flat like most of the others. There was no need for a palace with 100 rooms. His flat where he lived with his family was almost identical to that of a cork. He also got to meet the family of the son of the sun at the meeting room. They all have this pale color skin, almost white. He had a son of 12, and a daughter of 16, but he felt no attraction to her, rather opposite. But he found his wife more attractive. He also got to eat with them, and remarked that nobody talked while eating. Then the son on the sun told him to write a narrative of his visit when he came back to Earth, but also said that nobody would believe him those first years, but after some 20 years, that would change, he said. Now it is half a century, 50 years since this occurred. They told him that they would show him much of their planet in the next few days if he was to stay there before going back to Earth. After the visit from the sun, he was showed the marvelous city from the top of the roof, where they had landed with this flying wagon for this visit. One of the big differences to Earth, he remarked, was that it was no noise there, only the hums from the small ships. All the walking for the people happened on narrow streets because of the little space for pedestals, but other transport happened on subsurface by subway. He said that on this planet they had 20 billion people on the same area as on Earth had 4 billion, 5 times more than the density on Earth in 1958. So it was a very overpopulated planet. Later on that day they flew him very quick to see all around a cart. They flew to a farm, where he was shown farming in terraces that look like stairs, like those similar to rice farming on Earth, like in the East, but the vegetable they had down there on that cart where they flew over, look similar to potatoes. They flew over, look similar to potatoes. The small hill that was made up of these steps, there was 20 steps, and 100 meters wide. The tractors were not making any noise, only a low hum. He said it was driven by solar power, supposedly electric. The living houses were then placed on hills, rocky places, because where it was possible to produce food, it had to be utilized. Later they flew over flocks of grassing buffalo kinds of animals, but these were twice as big and only one horn, of half a meter. Arthur had never flown on a plane back on Earth. It was an impressive sight to see all this, also from above. They passed big mountains, and when he later saw pictures of high flying from Earth, he recognized it. But they also flew over a city, which looked to be on a mountain. It was built on just a mountain, out of the need for space as said before, and up there, they could not place a farm. On this mountain were also the biggest mines for solar steel, so there was also a lot of production going on in or around this mountain city. When we flew over its center, its ends were lost from sight, and it was built completely on top of rocky mountains. There were hills like the Sugarloaf in Rio. Then they landed in this mountain city and ate a meal there, while his host seemed to be well known for those people. He also then remarked that their custom was to only pray before eating when in private, like home, and where many were gathered, they prayed inside only instead, out of practical reasons. Then he was taken to an enormous factory where the solar steel was created. He said it looked like an airfield. There were thousands of similar ships there that were flying, hovering and parking. I asked why is it that they only arrive, and almost none are leaving. Because it's almost time to start work. But, who are those who arrive in those ships? Are they all workers? Yes, except for some who live nearby, all come by these ships. Are you saying that all who work here are rich? Since one of those ships must be very expensive. No, they do not cost. And here being an Akartian citizen and a worker, is enough to have a right to one. I don't understand, but you will before you return to Earth. Then he says that he was not able to understand the processes that he saw in the super factory. All what I saw in the factory could only be done if I were an engineer, scientist, designer or other expert. But he tries to give some descriptions, and those technical who are interested, would have a good time in reading all these many details about this automatic factory and its production in the book. In that factory they also produced flying saucers, and he was given an explanation on how they operate in the atmosphere, and in space. There they also made laser-like weapons, which made our weapons to nothing, but they warned against the atom bomb. This was the time when the military army was very strong. He also told him some of how the system of the power source of the ships worked. Visit to an astronomic observatory with also defense use and functions. Then he was taken to atop a mountain, where he saw a tube-like funnel reaching 200 meters up and they landed there, but it was terribly cold, and Arthur said that he was very tired at that time. By way of this equipment, he was shown a view of Earth. But those observatories had also the opportunity to shoot neutralizer beams into space onto any hostile incoming ship from eventually aggressors. So these observatories were placed around the planet like a net as a defense system. Later they arrived at Akort's home, where they said good night, but Arthur woke up early the next day. Remember, the nights was abnormally long, 17 hours to be exact, compared to what he was used to. He went out to the terrace and watched from the balcony of the city lights at night, but it was very cold outside, but he had to see this sight. The next day, they flew to a holiday center at the coast, where they landed on the rooftop of a very long block building along the coast, which reminded him of the Wall of China when he saw it from high up. But it's much bigger and 20 kilometers long, but it was a continuous blocks along this coast. It was 100 meters width, and 500 meters from the seashore. A lot of ships arrived together with them. On the other side of this long wall, was another city. When they left their ships open, Arthur had not yet habituated to the money-free situation there, as he expressed concern for leaving the craft unlocked. There they also ate in a bar where he says he went in a room with perhaps 1,000 tables. There he again remarked that nobody seemed to pay for the food. After that, we went to the trees and sat down comfortably on some stools similar to chairs that rotated. I put my hands behind my head and we remained there for some minutes. But in that calm moment, I commenced to reflect and I saw in my mind an infinity of things that I was still unable to explain satisfactorily. Brusquely, I raised my body and remained seated, resolving to ask Akort to explain some of these things that I did not understand. One of these was that, since I had come to Akort, I still had not seen anybody pull out money to pay for anything. We had just eaten a meal with nearly 1,000 people and nobody had paid anything. With relation to us, I had some kind of explanation, since we had that paper, which could perhaps be a form of requisition by the government, but the rest. To clear up this doubt that I have. What kind of money do you have here? He rose up and sat in the same position as I, right in front of me and said, Money? We have no money here on Akort. I almost fell on my back, stool and all. But how? But how do they buy things, and pay their employees? He gave a sigh and responded, "Well, this is a very lengthy affair, but I will try to explain to you. Akkad was all divided up into countries and each one had their own type of government and money. That being the case, when they began to feel the problems of overpopulation, those better off commenced to acquire every palm of our land. Those who had money obtained and owned more space than they needed to live, while those less favored by fortune were banished to the streets. This resulted in dishonesty, robberies, several wars, and all the rest. Why? Always because of the evil of money. The whole planet was an inferno. A few survived and others in greater number died of hunger, misery and pain. Then when it seemed like all was lost, there emerged the greatest scientist of all time here on Akkad. And what did he do? He discovered the means to take advantage of the very energy of the sun. What did that have to do with the money situation? Everything. Once discovered, he and two more of his followers invented the arms which we still have. Was he rich or poor? Very rich, but he spent all his fortunes on investigations and experiments which resulted in benefits for all. In what manner? In the following way. When he succeeded in inventing the neutralizer beam weapon, he told nobody of his invention, but gave adequate proof of what he could do with such a weapon. He threatened all of the countries, that if they could not find a common denominator for their differences, he would use the weapon. He presented a global plan for the salvation of the planet, then all or almost all accepted and obeyed him. His first step was to abolish all the frontiers, making all of Akkad only one country. The second was to level all of the cities to equal rights and obligations. To obtain this, he had to get rid of the money, and these automatically ended profits, speculations, robbery, usury and many other things, proceeding from money. Then he must have been some kind of dictator. No, he did not become directly the government, but nevertheless gave ideas to others who then put them into practice. Certainly he depended on the support of some strong country? No, it is as I said. 90% of the population of Akkad lived in oppression and misery, and thus they understood his ideas and supported him. The remaining 10% could do nothing, and finally, they accepted also. And as the people helped to install this regime, the same people had the right to select their governors. They proposed that the scientist be selected, but he would not accept. However, he indicated one son of his. That one was selected and became the first governor of all of Akkad. Since the scientist was called the man of the sun, thanks to his discoveries, his son was called the son of the sun. From this proceeded the tradition of calling our president the son of the sun. That's the reason? I thought it was a sacred name. No, it is not, as you can see. When and for how long is the governor of Akkad then selected? Every 3 years in Akkad, equals to 5 Earth years and 6 Earth months. But how can you get along without money to buy or sell the things? How do you do it? Here, nobody needs to buy or sell anything. There is enough work for those who are poor that they can have all that they need or desire, without the immoralities. Here, it is a crime for anyone to refuse to work. We came to the conclusion that money is the work of the evil doings. Without it many evils are avoided. Are they obligated to work until after they are old? No, the people work so many hours per day or night, and for the hours that are left, they can go where they like, eat or drink in any public place, without extravagances, and do as they please. And every year there is a period of rest, then they can travel throughout all of Akkad and see and do what they please, traveling by whatever means they prefer. For this there is enough work available, which is furnished by the government. What one citizen has, they all have, because here all that is produced obeys a global planet, such as homes, ships, clothes, alimentation, etc. Up to what age do they have to work? It is like this. Until 11 years in that cart, but they have to study. From there forward they are going to work in a profession which was approved by the schools. They work until 36 years in that cart, and after that they retire. Then, they can stay in one place for the rest of their life, or travel wherever they want, live in one fixed place or live in a hotel, or various hotels, as they choose. They have all the assistance and attention they require for the rest of their life. Is this law also for women? Well, the women also study up till 11 years, and after that then they may marry and care for a home, or if they do not want to do that, they are obligated to work according to their profession. When, and if, they go on interplanetary voyages, their laws stipulate, it is a crime to bring back terrestrials on the planet they visit to Akart. The commander of the ship that brought the Earthman, Artur to Akart, he was demoted of his rank to an operator. I don't understand how the commander of an interplanetary ship, of such high position, could pass to become an operator, because of an unfortunate such as me? Yes, because our laws concerning the terrestrials is as follows. We must not touch nor kill, still less bring one from another planet back to Akart, as in your case. Here the laws are made by man, and those that disobey must pay for their disobedience. I thought that a functionary of such high position would have some rights. No. Here we have neither highs nor lows. All are as equals, even the son of the sun, their governor. When he finishes his days as governor, for which he was selected by all the people, he will return to plow the fields, because that is where he had came from before governor. What are these mines of solar steel? Solar steel is special steel utility, I believe, still has not been discovered on Earth. It is of that which we make our solar ships, like that in which you traveled with me, and other things as well. It has many other uses. He was again told of their problem of overpopulation, and how it could be necessary to move part of their population to Earth, after a nuclear war had wiped out much of the Akartians, and they had the means to clean up the environment rather quickly with their advanced technology. They seem to have observing bases here on the moon, as also the Corunders talked about. And yes, they then meant that an atomic war was unavoidable in 1958. But seemed to be out of insight into the watching of our Earth from more advanced races, which make up a kind of guardian angels for our planet Earth. The Akartians spoke very briefly in the 50s about 3 factions. Today, there are 4 factions. Until the 50s, prior to there were 2 rival factions. Emerging later was a 3rd faction, but the 3rd was still sketchy. The Akartians have been silent for many years now. They are still monitoring the planet Earth. They believe that we waste too much time fighting, and should have been at peace long ago. They will come after our atomic war to bring order. We are not exactly unaware that there on your Earth, there exist 2 or more factions which are in conflict, and all possess atomic bombs, with high destructive power, and they continue to make more all the time, and of greater scale. Instead of using the nuclear energy for destructive ends and they used it constructively, our hopes would be nullified. What hopes? Are you saying that you intend to invade the Earth? Yes, but as I have already said, not on those terms. Let me explain in what manner. You must be aware that an atomic war on Earth is inevitable, and, even if we wanted to instigate it, we could, since it would only be necessary to intercept an airplane or ship of either faction, that the one would judge that it was the other. But, we are not going to intervene in any such manner, because we have come to the conclusion that they would not resist for much time the curiosity to see the foul-up that caused the situation. And when this happens, none of them will escape the devastation, because with only a few of those bombs, the whole terrestrial globe will be contaminated. Once this happens, we can peacefully take over the whole planet, because those few who remain will be in no position to offer resistance. On the contrary, they will welcome us. But what future is there when the terrestrial globe contaminated by destruction and radioactive poison? Whether it is contaminated constitutes no problem for us. Why not? Because we use an apparatus which neutralizes the malefic effects of radioactive poison, transforming it into fertilizer for the soil and for other things. If such a war happened, how much time would you wait before going into action? We would go into action as soon as the war ended, because it would cost us to wait, as the vegetation would all die in the zones of conflagration. There is no victory in such a war. They would attack each other mutually, we are certain of this, because we know all the secrets of the terrestrials, against which they know practically nothing concerning us. But if I tell them of what I have seen, and heard here on Eckhart, I give you all the reason when I say that nobody is going to believe you. What suddenly interests me is that which awakened the son of the sun in the council, when from one moment to the next, after finding danger in my return to earth, he asked me to make a written account of all that I saw, heard and felt here, and to try to divulge it. Perhaps it was to test my loyalty. I can tell you that it was not for that. We are interested in a large part of the terrestrials having knowledge of some possible narrative of yours in this respect, and as is to be hoped, nobody is going to believe it at this time. Why not at this time? Because they are only going to believe me when some of these facts have been proven. How will this benefit them and when? When they come out of the war and we appear on the earth. The few who survive, due to your knowledgeable aid, will know something of our system of government, our manner of life and being, and thus will not make us suffer when there's resistance, which would be useless to try. The Akarshans maintain a base here on Earth, for some centuries now. And every so often they rotate their staff. They have built a huge space platform several miles in diameter some distance away from their home planet. This station they use as a stopover point, to station thousands of spaceships, to station thousands of spaceships, that travel from planet to planet. Their ships travel over 311 miles per second, that's over 18,660 miles per minute. This group has antimatter beam weapons. Earth terrestrials will not have antimatter beam weapons until about the year 2990 AD. And it is this weapon they will use to vaporize the planet Mars from the solar system in a brutal interplanetary war. It will be the last war the Earthman will fight, before he realizes peace is the only way. I would like to broaden the question on one point. Are you saying that you are going to come as owners of the house, and not as strangers? Well, I have already said that we are not going to do anything bad to anybody. Now, once you have done the mischief by your hands, nothing is more logical than that we benefit you. We Aquarians, by force of circumstances, have learned to be realists. This question is comparable with a fable that my father always told when I was a boy, which is as follows. A man who had innumerable cages thought it well to place birds in almost all of them. He had two hanging one beside the other. In these two cages the birds were multiplying. One came to the point where there was no more room for more, but they lived well adjusted and were each contented with a place to sit. All those that the man allowed to hatch, also were given the means to live. Contrary to the first, the second had plenty of space, however they commenced to quarrel, each one wanted the better place, The stronger lived comfortably and the weak had to get used to the street corners and be satisfied with the crumbs. The roost there was left to the strong. Each one wanted to be better and to control. Finally a struggle broke out, so fierce that they mutually destroyed each other, and with them also most of the weak ones, who had nothing to do with this. The man, on seeing this, gave access to those of the other cage, of which he moved half to the first. These went there and reconstructed the broken nests, resuscitating some of those who had escaped with their lives, and thus they were able to live in peace for many years, without worrying about the problem of space, as much in one cage as the other. I understand the moral. Unhappily for us terrestrials, perhaps this same thing is going to come to pass. It is somewhat similar to Earth and Descartes. I sat with my head down. After some minutes of silence between us, I asked, "Do you not feel that you have erred in showing and explaining to me all this with respect to your arms and means of locomotion? Since once I return to Earth, if I am given the time to do this in the manner in which you have explained all, I think the government would give me the necessary means, and I have the impression that I could come to a conclusion." He swallowed dryly and leaned back to respond, and then between reprimanding and fear, he said, "Well, in the first place, I believe you are not even thinking of doing this, and second, the terrestrials at the moment do not have materials to this end at their disposal. But please, do not speak to me of similar things anymore, because if anyone here suspected what we are doing, perhaps you would have to live here on Descartes the rest of your days. I cannot say anything more, because I cannot judge their capabilities, neither in one thing or another. Only then was it that I saw where I had put myself with my foolish suppositions, and I responded. But it is not that I judge myself capable of this. It is scarcely a supposition. This I know, but you are not going to want to nuke these suppositions known to the Son of the Sun and the Council." Saying this, he stopped talking, and remained with the fingers of his hands interlaced, pensive. At one time he came to see a seemingly poor man there who seemed to have fallen outside. His clothes were unusual compared to the others, and seemed to be dirty also. And they described to him that he was a criminal. But as they had no prisons, those went around free, but had to beg for the living, as they had no longer any access to the advantages the society gave the rest. All got their sentence from what they had done. Those could not enter any public establishment to obtain what they needed. The prisoners were marked with a medallion to wear around their neck, and could not be taken off until the penalty had been through. They could neither travel by any of the public transports, and when they were in prison only to walk around the streets begging for food. Some sat out food for them, like for wild animals, and it was indeed humiliation. Those who are married could get some help from their wives or children. Below their cities, there ran parallel automatic subways, which ran at different speeds. When they reached the end of the station, the subway went back and all operated automatically, and the passengers could make a stop at the station they wished. It all operated on electric power. On his last day on that planet he was also taken to a sport-like arrangement where two teams fought a pushing competition. Never seen nothing like it. But they also had a football-like competition. It is to remark that this sport field had artificial grass, something that was not yet made here on our Earth at that time in 1958. After the sport visit, and a farewell greeting to the sun, he was taken back to the family of a cork, and said goodbye in a short manner to them. He was also told the problems they still had regarding space travel, and they told him it was best to stay unconscious for the part of this trip, because his body was not yet used to the gravity in space. We must remember that this race was in the first steps regarding interplanetary trips. They departed from the planet returning Arthur back to Earth. He slept part of the trip to their space station, about 50,000 kilometers out in space, so it was not much time for him to get used to it. There was an enormous platform in space. There was like a city there, and houses that look like igloos, and all out had to wear special suits. On the return trip he was also showed around the ship, which had 3 levels. The first and third had less rooms than the second. The lower had small ships, and some kind of solar weapons also. They reached the middle level by an elevator, and it had laboratories, rooms and corridors. In the various compartments we entered, we always found humans seated in front of super complicated apparatus, covered with instruments of all types. The motor room where they created the propulsion force was 5 by 5 meters, and in the middle of it were 6 motors, about the size of a barrel of gasoline, arranged in 2 rows or 3, one above the other. He was told that these captured and transmitted the solar energy moving the ship. Only 2 worked at the time, the rest for reserve, in case the others malfunction. All made of matter, he was told that it was impossible for them to malfunction. The ship had other motors used in the atmosphere. He was told the ship had a normal crew of 32 people. After many days in space, the ship came to Earth, but first they landed in an icy place he was told was on the pole, and he drew the conclusion to be the south. From there on, only a short time till they led him out of some kilometers from his house, to where he was walking before the bright light and lost consciousness, and he felt so heavy being back on Earth. After some time and confused, he spent days inside his house. He began writing down all this he had experienced, and he reported everything he remembered of Eckhart. But they went on with further contacts with Arthur, after his return.